Well, I think the first thing to say, I mean, you know, Ray, you and Sue were thanking all the sponsors and everyone involved, but it's amazing, this this phenomena. So thanks to you and Sue. I am going to take everyone through basically a System 1 approach to, I suppose, strategy and tracking in market research. I don't suppose anybody listening in, either live or in the recording, will be surprised to hear, you know, John chatting about System 1, because I think as we're all sort of, you know, educating ourselves and learning, most decisions are quick, instinctive, intuitive, they're emotional, they're System 1, which massively basically outguns the rational, logical, heavy lifting of the kind of, you know, logic processor that is System 2. Yeah, we think much less than we think, and those who tell the best stories rule the world. Not a bad summary, I think, of, you know, the things we're learning. And I know there are some great presentations on storytelling separate to this, which I'm looking forward to. Marketing, you know, as written in the Big Blue Book by, you know, Philip Kotler, where we have this sense that we're basically trying to get the maximum number of loyal customers that only buy us, is a nonsense. As the Bass Institute and the, you know, the Ehrenberg Bass Institute and Byron Sharp, you know, have shown, I think, you know, unequivocally, basically people choose from a repertoire. We have 3 or 4 or 5 options from which we kind of select, and brand leaders are chosen slightly more often by slightly more people, yeah, and loyalty sort of comes for free. So given that context, the things that we've been trying to sort of measure and track in traditional kind of strategy and tracking, I'm really not convinced that they really predict what's going on. So what I'm going to take us through, just, you know, in the 17 minutes, are the 3 things that behavioral science seems to suggest are necessary, you know, for actual success, for marketing success. And this is across all categories. And those 3 are fame, feeling, and fluency. The first 2 probably quite self-evident, the third one less so, but we'll get to that. Okay. When I say fame, it's basically how quickly a brand comes to mind when you think of the category. If I say soft drinks, how quickly does whatever, Coke, Lilt, Sprite, Diet Coke, you know, kind of come to mind, yeah? And just a quick example, if I say, which is the bigger city, London or Lima, you can play this at home, even if you're doing email, San Diego or San Antonio, Tokyo or Istanbul, Bangkok or Bangalore. Some of you may be geography sort of enthusiasts and know the population of these cities exactly, but generally when you play this game, London versus Lima, people think is bigger. Tokyo, bigger than Istanbul. Bangkok, bigger than Bangalore. And actually, the opposite is true. And it's only because cities that come to mind that are basically more famous, that we are more aware of, we ascribe bigger things to. And if you apply this to branding, basically, if you just ask people under time pressure, you know, what brands come to mind when you think of name a category, it's a pretty good indicator of the current market share. Okay, so that's fame. Feeling, as it suggests, basically how you feel about a brand, you know, and the more you feel about a brand, the more you ascribe it to be a good choice. Now, controversially, I thought I'd, you know, get topical. Mr. Trump on the left and VW emissions crisis on the right. You know, both perhaps not obvious, so not just trying to pick positive feelings, but let's start with Trump. Love him or hate him, you feel something about him. And I think that's probably even truer in America than it is, you know, outside of America. Very interesting to see, you know, how he's going to perform, you know, when it comes down to it. I think a little glimmer of hope has emerged, you know, in the first primary, but New Hampshire he's looking pretty strong in. One of the things that's interesting relating Trump to just, to feeling, but also fame, I saw a figure just now. Jeb Bush has spent £35 million on advertising and achieved a 3% share of the vote. Trump has spent 200,000, 0.2 of a million, and has achieved 30% of the vote. Yeah, so Jeb Bush outspent him 175 times, but Trump has managed to, achieve that fame and a great deal of feeling. And, he's gone from being completely disregarded as a candidate to actually being, a serious contender, worrying though that may be. Now, VW, again, the received wisdom for VW is that it's a disaster, and not just a disaster to their reputation, but to their brand share. But it's not quite as simple as that if you measure the right things. So I'm going to make a prediction here, which will be recorded, so you can hold me to account in the future. In every country outside of Germany, it is different. VW's share, market share, will be higher 18 months after the emissions crisis than it was before the emissions crisis. Because, I'm afraid, infamy, they've all got it infamy, they're more famous, even if it's for the wrong thing. The feeling does seem, we've been doing some work on this, to have come from neutral. People who previously felt neutral now, maybe feel negative. Those that felt positive still feel positive. It hasn't changed. So the net sum of feeling is higher, and of course, they're more in the news. So it's not as sort of straightforward when you measure things like this way as in previous research. And then the third one is fluency. And fluency is basically the distinctive assets. These are the things that help your brand come to mind. Basically, recognition speeds decision. So going back to Trump, the mad hair, the kind of comb over, it's got nothing to do with being a politician or policies or anything, really, but it's what makes him fluent. It's what makes him recognizable. It's a powerful symbol. And, the white earbuds for the iPod, the fact that they were white didn't help. In fact, they weren't very good, kind of earphones. But it made it recognizable. And the quicker something is recognizable, not only the quicker we recognize it, the more we're likely to buy, but it seems that we actually will pay a premium for things that we recognize more readily, which is kind of interesting. So the more fluent something is, the higher the premium that you can establish for the brand. All right, so let's have a look at some examples of fluency where the brand name isn't there, but I suspect everyone who just departing from email for a moment and looking at the screen, Ray was saying earlier, there aren't many slides that actually need to be looked at, but this might be one of them. What are the brands on the screen? We kind of know them pretty instinctively. Okay, so let's apply all three. So fame, the percentage of a category mentioning a brand under time pressure. Feeling, we use face trace to measure how people feel about a brand. And then fluency, the extent to which a brand's assets are distinctive, again, under time pressure. So whether it's a color or it's a phrase, or in the case of Donald Trump, a hairstyle. So when you put the three factors together, basically what you'll find is that small brands have small fame, feeling, and fluency, and the biggest brands have the most amount of fame, feeling, and fluency. And what it seems, from all the work we've done, is that fame will give you a pretty good understanding of where a brand is now, because it's historical, so it'll give you a sense of its brand share. Feeling is the best predictor of what will happen in 18 months. Yeah, and so none of this is short-term, next week's sales, or even a month. This is the long-term, profitable brand growth that this is predicting. And Fluency, a little like feeling, is also a predictor of the future, but it's also a very, very good indicator of premium, which of course has a massive effect on the profitability. Okay, so that's size of brand. So what you're looking at here is an ability to sort of predict whether a brand's going to be growing or declining. Yeah? So where the fame and the feeling are kind of sort of small, diminishing, it will be declining. So a once famous brand which is losing feeling will be on the slide. And basically a brand that may not be very famous yet, but its feeling is really strong, as is its fluency, will be the brand likely, all things being equal, to be growing. So what I want to do is just take you quickly through a banking example in the UK, because then it'll all come to life. So those three measures, fame and fluency, are put together to give you basically a 1 to 5 star rating. 1-star brand, completely unknown, just not famous. 5-star brand, famous, the obvious choice for most people. Okay, now, for those, again, who are not looking at email, you might have to have a little look at this chart. So these are all the UK banks, from Nationwide, down at the bottom 2-star, to Barclays and Lloyds. It's surprising that there are no 4, let alone 5-star brands in banking. Now, if I just go back, just looking at it, and then I'm going to go forward again, you'll see each one of the little round doors that represents the brands move from the bottom line to the top. And that is our prediction of what will be happening to each of these brands in market share if all things are equal in terms of marketing spend. If anyone changes significantly, that could affect it. And the biggest winner, and it has been for the last 3 years, is Santander. So Santander is on the rise, and it's come from nowhere about 5 years ago to be right up there competing with HSBC, Lloyds, Barclays, NatWest. And you can see that, frankly, going in the wrong direction. They're famous, but basically they're losing and have lost quite a lot of feeling. And I'm going to show you some of the detail behind that, because I think hopefully it brings it to life. So here are the fame, feeling, and fluency plots for each of the brands, and you can see Barclays, Lloyds, HSBC, NatWest, a lot of fame. I mean, they've been around for a long time. But their feeling has been on the slide, and rather rapidly, I'm sorry to say for them, for a number of years, probably since the banking crisis. Santander, by contrast, which came from nowhere, basically has enormous fluency, which assets that it owns. The feeling relative in banking, remember, is the strongest, and actually it's building fame, reasonably rapidly. Looking at here is basically how quickly these brands come to mind when you say banking. And HSBC, it's pretty high, but Santander is almost there from a standing start about 5 years ago. So pretty impressive. This is their feeling. So basically, what you've got at the bottom is surprise and happiness. White is neutral, and then you've got the negative emotions grouped at the top. And, this is Santander, who, by the way, have the most feeling in banking. Most of it is neutral. The banks, I'm afraid, do not engender a great deal of feeling. But this one, Santander, is ahead of its rivals. And then in terms of fluency, this is how quickly, basically, you recognize, these brands. Santander, again, right up there with Barclays. And when you actually see what they own, on the right-hand side is where you blur out the logo and you see how quickly people can recognize it. Santander wins. And then on the left is what colors the banks own. And HSBC own red, which has been totally taken by Santander. They've sort of eclipsed, as HSBC has become, more monochrome. Santander has sort of leapt ahead. In terms of taglines, Barclays, or associations, Premier League, not surprisingly. Santander, though, that simple 1, 2, 3. Lloyds Bank for the journey is sort of starting to work, etc. And the world's local bank for HSBC. So when you put all of those things together, you can start not only to explain the rise of Santander and the fall, if you like, of some of the major banks, but you can also make a prediction about what's likely to be coming. So for Santander, I mean, they are a 3-star brand, and it looks like it's possible for them to kind of break into the 4-star territory if they continue to build the fame that they've been generating. They continue to do that simple 1, 2, 3, and they've got various sort of advertising, but that red, their distinctive assets of red, 1, 2, 3, celebrity endorsement. And in a year's time, it'll be interesting to see whether whether that has come to pass. And I think well, we haven't actually got the political polling results yet, but we are going to do it in America. So happy to share that when we have it. But the VW prediction, so you can hold me to account, is outside of Germany. VW brand share will be after the emissions crisis than it was before. And that's it. Thanks for listening.